The office was completely silent. Not a single soul in sight, just the hum of computers and the flickering fluorescent lights overhead. Linda sat at her desk, staring at her computer screen with tired, bloodshot eyes. It was 11 o'clock at night, and she'd been here since 6 that morning. Her fingers moved slowly across the keyboard, typing yet another email that her boss needed first thing in the morning. She rubbed her temples, feeling the familiar throb of a headache coming on. How many nights had it been like this? She'd lost count. The coffee cup beside her was empty, stained brown from the 4 cups she'd already had today. Her stomach growled, reminding her that she'd skipped lunch again. And dinner, there was a protein bar in her drawer somewhere, but she was too exhausted to even reach for it. Her phone buzzed on the desk. Linda's heart sank. She already knew who it was. She picked up the phone and saw the name flashing on the screen. Ms. Patterson, her boss. Did you finish updating the client presentation? I need it ready by 7 a.m. tomorrow. Also, can you reschedule my hair appointment for Thursday and order lunch for the board meeting? Make sure it's from that Italian place, not the one we used last time. Linda closed her eyes and took a deep breath. It was always like this. One more thing, and then another, and another. She typed back a quick response. Yes, I'll have everything ready. She'd been working as an executive assistant for 15 years now. 15 long years of answering phones, scheduling meetings, booking flights, and handling a million little details that kept the company running smoothly. She used to love her job. She used to feel proud of what she did. But somewhere along the way, things had changed. It started small. An extra hour here and there. A weekend email that needed a quick response. Ms. Patterson would say things like, I know it's your day off, but this will only take 5 minutes. And Linda would do it. Because that's what good employees did, right? They went the extra mile, but 5 minutes turned into an hour. One weekend email turned into 10. And before she knew it, Linda was working 80 hours a week, sometimes more. She'd be at the office by 7 in the morning and wouldn't leave until 10 or 11 at night. And even when she got home, her phone would buzz with messages. Can you handle this? I forgot to mention. Quick question. There was never a moment of peace. Never a moment when she could just breathe and be herself. Her whole life had become about work. About making sure Ms. Patterson's day ran smoothly. About being available 24/7, just in case something came up. The worst part was that Ms. Patterson didn't seem to notice. Or maybe she did notice and she just didn't care. She'd built the company from nothing, worked her way up through sheer determination and long hours. And now she expected everyone around her to have that same level of dedication, that same willingness to sacrifice everything for the job. I didn't get where I am by working 9 to 5, she'd say whenever someone hinted at needing time off. Success requires sacrifice, and Linda had sacrificed. She'd sacrificed her health, her social life, her peace of mind. She hadn't seen her friends in months. She couldn't remember the last time she'd watched a movie or read a book just for fun. Even simple things like grocery shopping or doing laundry felt like luxuries she didn't have time for. Her daughter Rachel had been calling more often lately. Mom, are you okay? You sound exhausted. Linda would brush it off, telling her everything was fine. Just a busy week at work. It would slow down soon. But it never did. It only got worse. They used to have dinner together every Sunday. It was their special time, just the two of them, catching up on life and enjoying each other's company. But Linda had canceled the last 4 dinners in a row. I'm so sorry, honey. Something came up at work. Next week for sure. Rachel had stopped suggesting it. Linda could hear the disappointment in her daughter's voice, and it broke her heart. But what could she do? She needed this job. After her husband passed away 5 years ago, this job had been her lifeline. The medical bills from his illness had drained their savings. The funeral expenses had taken what little was left. She was still paying off credit cards, still trying to keep her head above water financially. She couldn't afford to lose this job. She couldn't afford to say no to Ms. Patterson, so she kept going, kept pushing through the exhaustion and the headaches and the constant anxiety. She'd wake up in the middle of the night, her heart racing, wondering if she'd forgotten something important. Did she send that email? Did she confirm that appointment? Did she order the right catering for the meeting? Her body was starting to rebel. She'd lost weight, not because she was trying to, but because she simply forgot to eat. The dark circles under her eyes had become permanent fixtures. Her hands shook sometimes, especially when she was really tired, and the headaches were getting worse. They'd start at her temples and spread across her forehead, a dull, constant ache that never fully went away. Last week, she'd caught a glimpse of herself in the bathroom mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. When had she gotten so thin? When had her hair started looking so dull and lifeless? When had those deep lines appeared around her eyes? She looked old, worn out, used up, but she couldn't stop. She couldn't slow down. Because Ms. Patterson needed her. The company needed her, and she needed the paycheck. Tonight was no different from any other night. Ms. Patterson had dumped a huge project on her desk at 4 o'clock, right when Linda was hoping to maybe leave a little early for once. I need a full presentation ready for the investors tomorrow morning. Charts, graphs, the whole thing. You know how I like it done. Linda had spent the last 7 hours working on it, perfecting every slide, double-checking every number. Her eyes burned from staring at the screen. Her shoulders ached from sitting hunched over her desk. But she was almost done. Just a few more slides to go. She reached for her coffee cup, forgetting it was empty. She set it down with a sigh and kept typing. Her chest felt tight. She'd been feeling that a lot lately, this weird pressure in her chest, like someone was sitting on her rib cage. She told herself it was just stress. Just anxiety, nothing to worry about. She popped an antacid from the bottle in her drawer. That usually helped. The tightness would ease up and she could keep working. That's all she needed. Just to get through tonight. Just to finish this presentation. Then maybe tomorrow would be a little easier. But even as she thought it, she knew it wasn't true. Tomorrow would be just like today. And the day after that would be the same. Because that's what her life had become. An endless cycle of work and exhaustion and trying to keep up with impossible demands. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from Ms. Patterson. Also, I need you to come in early tomorrow. Around 6. We need to go over everything before the meeting. Linda's hands trembled as she typed back. Of course. I'll be there. She saved the presentation and finally stood up from her desk. Her legs felt shaky. The room spun for just a second and she grabbed the edge of the desk to steady herself. She took a deep breath. She was just tired. That's all. She'd go home, get a few hours of sleep, and be back here bright and early tomorrow morning. As she gathered her things and headed toward the elevator, the tightness in her chest got worse. She pressed her hand against her sternum, willing it to go away. It was just heartburn, just stress, nothing serious. The elevator doors opened and Linda stepped inside. She leaned against the wall, closing her eyes for just a moment. Just a moment to rest before the drive home, before another sleepless night, before coming back to do it all over again tomorrow. She didn't know it yet, but tomorrow would be very different. Tomorrow everything would change. 3 days passed in a blur. Linda barely remembered them. More late nights, more impossible deadlines, more messages at midnight and 6 in the morning. Her body was screaming at her to stop, but she couldn't. She wouldn't. She just kept pushing forward, surviving on coffee and sheer willpower. It was Wednesday evening around 9 o'clock. Most of the office had emptied out hours ago. Linda sat at her desk, working on yet another urgent project that Ms. Patterson had dropped on her that afternoon. Her vision was blurry. She blinked hard, trying to focus on the screen in front of her. The tightness in her chest was back. It had been coming and going for days now, but tonight it felt different. Stronger. More intense. She pressed her hand against her chest and took a deep breath. But it didn't help. The pressure just kept building. Her left arm started to tingle. A strange, uncomfortable sensation that made her pause. She shook her arm, thinking maybe she'd been sitting in a weird position. But the tingling didn't go away. If anything, it got worse. Linda stood up, thinking maybe she just needed to move around a bit. But the moment she got to her feet, the room tilted. Her legs buckled underneath her. She tried to grab onto the desk, but her hand missed. And then everything went black. She didn't feel herself hit the floor. Didn't hear the sound of her coffee cup shattering. Didn't know how long she lay there, unconscious, on the cold office floor. It was Robert, the night janitor, who found her. He'd been making his rounds, emptying trash cans and vacuuming, when he noticed the light still on in her cubicle. He walked over, expecting to tell her it was time to go home, And that's when he saw her, lying on the floor, pale and motionless. "Oh my God," he whispered, his hands shaking as he pulled out his phone and dialed 911. "Please, I need an ambulance. There's a woman here, she's unconscious. I don't know what happened." "Please hurry!" The paramedics arrived within minutes. They checked her vital signs, loaded her onto a stretcher, and rushed her to the hospital. Robert rode with them, holding Linda's purse, trying to find emergency contact information in her phone. At the hospital, doctors and nurses swarmed around her. They hooked her up to monitors, started an IV, ran tests. Her blood pressure was dangerously high. She was severely dehydrated. Her body was in complete distress, shutting down from months of neglect and stress. "We need to contact her family," one of the nurses said, looking through Linda's phone. She found a contact labeled Rachel Daughter and made the call. Rachel was at work when her phone rang. She was a nurse herself, working the evening shift at a different hospital across town. When she saw the unfamiliar number, her heart skipped a beat. Something told her this wasn't good news. "Hello? Is this Rachel?" "This is County General Hospital. Your mother, Linda, was brought in by ambulance about 20 minutes ago. She collapsed at her workplace." "You should come right away." Rachel's blood ran cold. "Is she okay?" "What happened?" "The doctor will explain everything when you get here. But please, come as soon as you can." Rachel grabbed her bag and ran. She told her supervisor there was a family emergency and drove to the hospital faster than she probably should have. Her mind raced with terrible possibilities. Her mother had sounded so tired lately, so worn down. But Rachel never imagined it was this serious. When she burst through the emergency room doors, a nurse directed her to her mother's room. And what she saw there made her heart break into a million pieces. Her mother looked tiny in that hospital bed, fragile, old. There were tubes and wires everywhere, monitors beeping steadily, an oxygen tube in her nose. Her skin was gray, her cheeks hollow. She looked like she'd aged 10 years since Rachel had last seen her. "Mom," Rachel whispered, rushing to her bedside and taking her hand. It felt so cold, so small. A doctor came in a few minutes later, a kind-faced woman in her 50s with tired eyes. "Are you Linda's daughter?" "Yes, what happened? Is she going to be okay?" The doctor pulled up a chair and sat down, her expression serious. "Your mother collapsed from severe exhaustion and stress. Her blood pressure is extremely high, she's dehydrated, and her body is showing signs of prolonged stress and malnutrition. To be completely honest with you, if this had gone on much longer, we'd be looking at a heart attack or a stroke. Maybe both." Rachel felt like she couldn't breathe. "But she's going to be okay now, right? We're stabilizing her, but she needs complete rest. No work, no stress. Her body needs time to recover. This kind of burnout doesn't happen overnight. This has been building for months, maybe longer." Rachel nodded, tears streaming down her face. She'd known something was wrong. She'd tried to talk to her mother about it, but Linda always brushed her off. Always said she was fine. Always said she'd slow down soon. The doctor left, and Rachel sat there holding her mother's hand, watching her sleep. She looked so peaceful now, so still. But Rachel's mind was anything but peaceful. She was angry. Furious, actually. What kind of job does this to a person? What kind of boss demands so much that an employee literally works themselves into the hospital? She gently picked up her mother's phone from the bedside table. She knew the password. Her mother had never been good at keeping secrets from her. Rachel unlocked the phone, and what she found made her blood boil. Hundreds of messages. Literally hundreds. All from Ms. Patterson. Messages at 6 in the morning. Messages at midnight. Messages on weekends. Messages on holidays. Each one more demanding than the last. "Where is the Jefferson file? I need it now. Why didn't you answer my call? This is unacceptable. Cancel my afternoon and reschedule everything. And pick up my dry cleaning. Need the presentation redone. The colors are wrong." Rachel scrolled through them, her anger growing with each message she read. This wasn't a boss. This was a tyrant. Someone who saw her mother not as a person, but as a tool, something to be used until it broke. She found her mother's calendar app and opened it. The work logs were there, meticulously recorded. Linda had always been organized like that. Rachel's hands shook as she read the hours. 82 hours last week. 79 the week before. 85 the week before that. "Oh, Mom," Rachel whispered. Why didn't you tell me? She kept digging, finding emails, notes, reminders. Her mother had been handling everything. Work projects, personal errands for Ms. Patterson, even shopping for her boss's groceries. She was basically living two lives, her own and her boss's. Rachel was so absorbed in the phone that she didn't notice when her mother started to stir. Linda's eyes fluttered open, confused and disoriented. She looked around the hospital room, trying to figure out where she was. "Mom," Rachel said softly, putting the phone down and squeezing her mother's hand. "You're in the hospital. You collapsed at work." Linda's eyes went wide. "What? No, I need to—" She tried to sit up, panic flooding her face. "What time is it?" "I have to finish the presentation. Miss Patterson needs it by morning." "I have to—" "Mom, stop!" Rachel gently pushed her back down. "You're not going anywhere. You're in the hospital because you worked yourself into the ground." "But the presentation—" "Forget the presentation," Rachel said firmly. "Mom, do you understand what the doctor said? You almost had a heart attack. You could have died." Linda's face crumpled, and suddenly she was crying. Not quiet tears, but deep, wrenching sobs that shook her whole body. Rachel held her, letting her mother cry it out, feeling her own tears falling too. "I'm sorry," Linda gasped between sobs. "I'm so sorry. I couldn't say no. I couldn't lose this job. After your father died, after all the bills. I need this job, Rachel. I need it. Not like this," Rachel said, her voice breaking. "Not if it kills you. Mom, nothing is worth this. Nothing." Linda shook her head, still crying. "You don't understand. I have no savings. I have credit card debt. I can't afford to lose this job. I can't afford to make her angry." Rachel pulled back and looked her mother in the eyes. "Mom, listen to me. You're not going back there. Not like this. This is abuse. What she's doing to you is wrong. Please don't make trouble," Linda begged, fear in her eyes. "Please, Rachel. If I lose this job, I don't know what I'll do." Rachel didn't sleep that night. She stayed at the hospital, curled up in the uncomfortable chair beside her mother's bed, watching her sleep. Every beep of the monitor reminded her how close she'd come to losing her mom, how close Ms. Patterson had pushed her to the edge. By morning, Rachel had made up her mind. She'd called her friend Jennifer, who worked as a paralegal at a law firm downtown. They'd gone to college together, stayed close over the years. If anyone could help her figure out what to do, it was Jennifer. "Jen, I need your help," Rachel said quietly into her phone, stepping out into the hospital hallway so she wouldn't wake her mother. "My mom's boss has been making her work 80 hours a week. She collapsed from exhaustion. I have all the evidence. Messages, emails, work logs, everything." There was a pause on the other end. Then Jennifer's voice came through, sharp and focused. "Send me everything you have, right now. And Rachel, don't delete anything from your mom's phone. We might need the originals." Rachel spent the next hour forwarding screenshots and information to Jennifer. Her mother's work logs, the endless stream of messages, the demands at all hours, the personal errands disguised as work tasks, every piece of evidence that showed just how badly Ms. Patterson had been treating her mother. Jennifer called back an hour later. "Rachel, this is bad. Really bad. Your mom has a strong case here. This is workplace exploitation, and with the medical records showing the direct impact, we're looking at potential damages for health-related issues caused by hostile work environment." "So what do I do?" Rachel asked. "You need to confront this woman, but not emotionally, calmly, with all your evidence organized. Let her know that you have legal counsel and you're prepared to take action. Most employers will settle rather than face a lawsuit, especially when the evidence is this damning." Rachel took a deep breath. "Okay, I can do that." "One more thing," Jennifer added. "Your mom is going to be scared. She's going to think this will ruin her career. You need to be strong for her. Don't back down." When Linda woke up a few hours later, she looked better. Still exhausted, but the color had returned to her cheeks. The doctor had told Rachel that her mother would need to stay another day for observation, but she was stable now. "Morning, Mom," Rachel said, smiling softly. Linda looked around, remembered where she was, and her face fell. The presentation. Did someone finish the presentation? Mom, stop. You need to stop thinking about work. But Ms. Patterson, I'm going to see her today, Rachel interrupted. Linda's eyes went wide with panic. No, Rachel, no, please don't. I'm begging you. Don't make this worse. Rachel pulled her chair closer to the bed and took her mother's hands. Mom, listen to me. I talked to a lawyer. What she's been doing to you is illegal. You have rights, employee rights, and she's been violating them for months. I can't afford a lawyer, Linda whispered. Jennifer is doing this as a favor. She's putting together everything we need. Mom, you have proof, documented proof of everything. The hours, the messages, the medical records showing what this has done to your health. Linda shook her head, tears filling her eyes. They'll blacklist me. I'll never work in this industry again. Or, Rachel said gently, Ms. Patterson will realize she's in serious legal trouble and she'll make this right. Either way, you're not going back there to work yourself to death. I won't let you. Linda was quiet for a long moment. Then she squeezed Rachel's hand. When did you get so strong? Rachel smiled through her own tears. I learned from the best. That afternoon, Rachel took a personal day from her own job and drove to her mother's workplace. The building was sleek and modern, all glass and steel. She'd been here before, years ago, for a company holiday party, back when her mother still smiled and had energy and looked like herself. She walked through the lobby, took the elevator to the 10th floor, and stepped into the main office area. A receptionist looked up, surprised. Can I help you? I'm here to see Miss Patterson. It's about Linda, her assistant. The receptionist's expression shifted, becoming guarded. Do you have an appointment? No, but I think she'll want to see me. Tell her Linda's daughter is here. It's urgent. The receptionist made a call, spoke quietly into the phone, then nodded. She'll see you. Down the hall. Last office on the right. Rachel walked down the corridor, her heart pounding but her resolve firm. She had her mother's phone in her bag, loaded with evidence. She had notes from Jennifer. She had the medical records in a folder. She was ready. Ms. Patterson's office was enormous, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, expensive furniture, abstract art on the walls. And behind a massive desk sat Ms. Patterson herself. She was younger than Rachel expected. Early 40s, dressed in a designer suit, her dark hair pulled back in a tight bun. She looked up as Rachel entered, her expression cold and impatient. I'm very busy, Ms. Patterson said, not bothering with pleasantries. What's this about? Where's Linda? She hasn't responded to any of my messages. Rachel closed the door behind her and stayed standing. My mother is in the hospital, Ms. Patterson. She collapsed at her desk 3 days ago. Ms. Patterson's expression flickered, but only for a moment. I'm sorry to hear that. When will she be back? I have several important projects that need her attention. Rachel felt her anger rising but kept her voice steady. She's not coming back, not under the current conditions. Ms. Patterson leaned back in her chair, raising an eyebrow. I'm sorry, but this is between Linda and me. She's an adult. If she has concerns, she should come to me directly. She's too scared to come to you, Rachel said. She's terrified of losing her job, so I'm here instead. I don't appreciate the tone, Ms. Patterson said, her voice sharp. And I certainly don't appreciate being ambushed in my own office. Rachel pulled out her mother's phone and placed it on the desk. My mother has been working 80 hours a week, sometimes more. You've been messaging her at all hours of the day and night. Weekends, holidays, 3 in the morning. She has documented every single hour she's worked. Ms. Patterson glanced at the phone but didn't pick it up. Linda is a dedicated employee. I pay her well for her dedication. You pay her barely above market rate for a 40-hour work week, Rachel countered. Not for 80. And you've been having her do personal errands, grocery shopping, picking up dry cleaning. That's not in her job description. She volunteered for those tasks, Ms. Patterson said dismissively. I never forced her to do anything. Rachel pulled out the folder with the medical records and set it on the desk. The doctors say she was heading toward a heart attack or stroke. Severe exhaustion, dangerously high blood pressure, malnutrition, all caused by stress and overwork. All documented. For the first time, Ms. Patterson looked uncertain. She glanced at the folder but still didn't reach for it. Rachel continued, her voice firm. I've spoken with a lawyer. My mother has a very strong case for workplace exploitation and damages related to hostile work environment. These medical records directly link her condition to the stress and hours you've demanded from her. Your mother could have said no, Ms. Patterson said, but her voice had lost some of its edge. She's an adult. She made choices. She made choices because she was afraid, Rachel said. She's a widow with bills to pay and no safety net. You knew that, and you took advantage of it. Ms. Patterson stood up, walking to the window. She was quiet for a moment, staring out at the city. When she spoke again, her voice was different, defensive. I built this company from nothing. I worked 100-hour weeks. I sacrificed everything. That's what it takes to succeed. Then you should have hired more staff, Rachel said simply. You shouldn't have put it all on one person who couldn't say no. Ms. Patterson turned around, her jaw tight. What do you want? I want 3 things, Rachel said, pulling out the list Jennifer had helped her prepare. First, a settlement package, 6-month severance pay, health insurance coverage for a year, and compensation for the medical expenses related to her work-related stress. That's outrageous. Second, Rachel continued, a formal reference letter. A good one, not one that hints at problems or suggests she left under bad circumstances. A letter that reflects her 15 years of dedicated service. The next 24 hours felt like the longest of Rachel's life. She stayed with her mother at the hospital, trying to keep her calm, trying to keep herself calm. Every time her phone buzzed, they both jumped. But it was never Ms. Patterson. Just work messages, friends checking in, normal life continuing while they waited for their world to change. Linda was released from the hospital the next morning. The doctor gave strict instructions. Complete rest for at least 2 weeks. No stress, no work. Plenty of sleep and proper meals. Rachel drove her mother home, helped her into bed, and made her promise not to even think about checking her work email. But what if she calls? Linda asked nervously. Then I'll handle it, Rachel said firmly. Mom, you need to rest. Let me take care of this. At 4:30 that afternoon, Rachel's phone finally rang. Unknown number. She stepped out onto the balcony and answered. This is Rachel. This is David Chen, legal counsel for Ms. Patterson's company. The voice was professional, measured. Ms. Patterson has asked me to reach out regarding the matter you discussed yesterday. Rachel's heart pounded. I'm listening. My client is willing to agree to a settlement. 6 months severance at her current salary, health insurance coverage for 12 months, and $10,000 for medical expenses. We'll also provide a letter of recommendation. In exchange, your mother signs a confidentiality agreement and a release of all claims. Rachel had expected this, but hearing it still made her knees weak. And the apology? There was a pause. Ms. Patterson has agreed to write a personal letter acknowledging your mother's years of service and expressing regret for how things ended. It wasn't exactly what Rachel had asked for, but it was something. I need to discuss this with my mother. Can I have until tomorrow morning? We'd prefer to settle this quickly, the lawyer said. But yes, tomorrow morning is acceptable. Rachel went back inside, her hands shaking. Linda was sitting on the couch looking pale and anxious. Well? She asked. Rachel sat down beside her and explained everything. The severance, the insurance, the money for medical bills, the reference letter. As she talked, she watched her mother's face change. Fear gave way to disbelief. Disbelief gave way to something that looked almost like hope. They really agreed to all that? Linda whispered. They did. Mom, this is good. This is really good. But Linda was quiet, staring at her hands. What if I can't find another job? What if 6 months isn't enough? What if... Mom, stop. Rachel took her mother's hands. We'll figure it out, together. But right now you need to focus on getting better. That's the only thing that matters. Linda's eyes filled with tears. I'm scared, Rachel. I've been at that job for 15 years. It's all I know. No, Rachel said gently. You know so much more than that job. You're organized, capable, smart, and hardworking. Any company would be lucky to have you. A company that actually values you. That night, Linda couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the settlement. About signing away her right to ever talk about what happened. About starting over at 52 years old. It all felt overwhelming, but she also thought about how she'd felt these past months. The constant anxiety, the exhaustion, the feeling that she was drowning and couldn't catch her breath. Did she really want to go back to that? Even if she could? In the morning, she called Rachel into her room. "I want to take the settlement," Rachel smiled. "Are you sure?" "No," Linda admitted. "But I'm sure I don't want to keep living the way I was." That wasn't living. That was just surviving. Barely. Rachel called the lawyer back and agreed to the terms. They set up a meeting for 2 days later to sign the paperwork. Linda would get her settlement. Her nightmare would officially be over. The next few weeks were strange for Linda. She'd spent 15 years waking up to alarm clocks and rushing to work, and now she had nowhere to be. No emails to check, no meetings to prepare for, no demanding boss texting her at all hours. At first, the silence was uncomfortable. She didn't know what to do with herself. She'd pace around the house feeling restless and lost. But Rachel came by every day after her shifts, bringing groceries, cooking meals, just sitting with her mom and talking. "You need to give yourself time," Rachel kept saying. "You've been running on empty for so long. Your body needs to remember what rest feels like." Slowly, things started to change. Linda started sleeping through the night for the first time in years. She'd wake up naturally, without an alarm, and actually feel rested. She started eating regular meals, real meals, not just protein bars and coffee. The color came back to her face. The dark circles under her eyes began to fade. Rachel convinced her to try therapy. "Just someone to talk to, Mom. Someone who can help you process everything that happened." Linda was skeptical at first, but her therapist turned out to be wonderful. A kind woman named Dr. Martinez, who specialized in work-related trauma and burnout. She helped Linda understand that what had happened to her wasn't her fault. That she hadn't been weak or incompetent. She'd been exploited. "You were in an impossible situation," Dr. Martinez told her during one session. "Your boss created an environment where saying no felt dangerous, where setting boundaries felt like failure. That's not on you. That's on her." Hearing those words, Linda cried. She'd been carrying so much guilt, so much shame about ending up in the hospital. But maybe it really wasn't her fault. Maybe she'd been doing the best she could in a terrible situation. One afternoon, about 6 weeks after leaving the hospital, Linda was going through some old boxes in her closet. She found her watercolor supplies dusty and forgotten. She used to love painting. Before her husband got sick. Before work consumed her entire life. She couldn't even remember the last time she'd picked up a brush. On impulse, she set up her supplies on the kitchen table. She filled a jar with water, squeezed paint onto a palette, and just started painting. Nothing fancy, just colors and shapes and whatever came to mind. And for the first time in years, she felt something other than stress or exhaustion. She felt peace. Rachel came by that evening and found her mother surrounded by paintings, a genuine smile on her face. "Mom, these are beautiful." Linda looked up, almost embarrassed. "They're not very good. I'm rusty." "They're wonderful," Rachel said firmly. "When did you start painting again?" "Today, I found my old supplies and thought, why not?" Rachel hugged her mother tight. "I'm so proud of you." 3 months after the settlement, Linda felt ready to start looking for work again. The severance was helping, but it wouldn't last forever. And honestly, she missed working. Not the nightmare job she'd left behind, but the feeling of being useful, of having purpose. A year had passed since Linda left the hospital. A full year of healing, growing, and rediscovering who she was beyond her job title. She was sitting in her sunny office at the nonprofit, responding to emails from volunteers when her desk phone rang. "Linda, there's someone here to see you," the receptionist said. "She says her name is Beth. She doesn't have an appointment, but she seems pretty upset. Should I send her away?" Linda paused. The name didn't ring a bell, but something in the receptionist's voice made her curious. "No, it's okay. Send her back." A few minutes later, a young woman appeared in her doorway. She looked to be in her late 20s, with dark circles under her eyes and a nervous energy that Linda recognized all too well. It was like looking in a mirror from a year ago. Ms. Linda? The woman asked hesitantly. I'm sorry to just show up like this. My name is Beth Crawford. I used to work at your old company. I was Ms. Patterson's assistant after you left. Linda's stomach dropped. She gestured to the chair across from her desk. Please, sit down. Can I get you some water? Coffee? Water would be great, Beth said, sinking into the chair like her legs couldn't hold her anymore. Linda got them both water and sat back down. How did you find me? I asked around, Beth admitted. Someone at the company remembered you went to work for a non-profit. I called a few places until I found you. I hope that's not weird. I didn't know who else to talk to. It's not weird, Linda said gently. What's going on? Beth's hands shook as she held the water glass. I've been working for Miss Patterson for 8 months now. And I can't do it anymore. I'm falling apart. I can't sleep. I can't eat. I'm having panic attacks. My boyfriend says I'm not myself anymore, but I'm scared to quit. Scared of what she'll do. Scared I won't find another job. Linda's heart ached. She knew exactly what Beth was feeling. Every single word of it. How many hours are you working? 70, maybe 80 a week. Sometimes more. She texts me at 2 in the morning. Calls me on Sundays. I haven't had a real day off in 3 months. Beth's voice cracked. And the thing is, I know it's wrong. I know I should say something, but she makes you feel like if you can't handle it, you're weak. Like you're not good enough. You're not weak, Linda said firmly. And you're definitely good enough. What she's doing is wrong, Beth. It was wrong when she did it to me, and it's wrong now. Beth looked up, surprised. She did this to you too? Linda nodded slowly. I ended up in the hospital. Collapsed at my desk from exhaustion. That's why I left. Oh my God, Beth whispered. I had no idea. They just said you left for personal reasons. That's what the settlement agreement required, Linda explained. I signed papers saying I wouldn't talk about what happened. But you know what? I'm tired of staying quiet. If speaking up can help someone else, then it's worth it. Beth's eyes filled with tears. I thought I was the problem. I thought I was just not cut out for this kind of work. No, Linda said, leaning forward. The work environment is the problem. A boss who demands 80-hour weeks is the problem. A culture that treats exhaustion like a badge of honor is the problem. You are not the problem. They talked for over an hour. Linda told Beth her whole story, leaving nothing out. The endless hours, the anxiety, the health crisis, her daughter's intervention. Beth listened, crying softly, nodding along like Linda was describing her own life. What should I do? Beth finally asked. I can't afford to just quit. I have student loans, rent. I'm barely making it as it is. Linda thought carefully before answering. Here's what I learned. Your health is worth more than any job. Your life is worth more than any paycheck. I almost learned that lesson too late. But practically speaking, Linda continued, start documenting everything. Every text, every email, every hour you work. If you have to leave, you want evidence. And start looking for other jobs now while you still have the energy. Don't wait until you're in the hospital like I was. Beth nodded, wiping her eyes. Can I ask you something? Do you have any regrets about leaving? Linda smiled. Not even for a second. My only regret is that I didn't leave sooner. That I let it go on as long as I did. After Beth left, Linda sat at her desk for a long time, thinking. She'd signed a confidentiality agreement, yes. But Beth had come to her. She hadn't gone looking for this conversation. And if staying silent meant watching another person destroy themselves the way she almost had, then maybe some agreements weren't worth keeping. That evening, Linda called Rachel and told her about Beth's visit. Mom, this is serious, Rachel said. If she's treating another assistant the same way, maybe we need to do something. Like what? I signed papers saying I wouldn't talk about it. You talked to someone who came to you for help, Rachel pointed out. That's different. And Mom, if this is a pattern, if she's doing this to multiple people, that's bigger than your settlement agreement. That's a workplace culture problem. Linda knew Rachel was right. But the thought of getting involved again, of potentially facing Ms. Patterson or the company lawyers, made her stomach turn. She'd worked so hard to move on, to build a new life. Did she really want to drag herself back into that mess? But then she thought about Beth's face. The exhaustion, the fear, the feeling of being trapped. She remembered what that felt like. And she realized she couldn't just turn away. The next day, Linda called Jennifer, Rachel's lawyer friend who'd helped with her settlement. Jennifer, I need your advice. Hypothetically speaking, if someone came to me for help, someone in a similar situation to what I went through, what am I allowed to say? Jennifer was quiet for a moment. You're asking if you can talk about your experience despite the confidentiality agreement? Yes. Okay, here's the thing. Confidentiality agreements have limits. You can't go to the press or make public statements about the company. But if someone approaches you privately seeking help, sharing your experience in that context is generally protected, especially if it's for the purpose of helping them protect their own rights. Linda felt relief wash over her. So I didn't violate anything by talking to Beth? Who's Beth? Linda explained the situation. Jennifer listened carefully, and Linda could almost hear her lawyer brain working through the details. Here's what I think, Jennifer finally said. If this woman wants to file a complaint or pursue action, she should. And if she needs a witness to establish a pattern of behavior, you could potentially provide that testimony. Your confidentiality agreement prevents you from initiating action, but it doesn't prevent you from responding to someone else's action. But wouldn't the company come after me? They might try. But pattern evidence is powerful, Linda. If multiple people are making similar complaints, that's not about your specific settlement anymore. That's about systemic problems. Linda thanked Jennifer and hung up. She sat with this information for a few days, unsure what to do with it. Then Beth called her. Linda, I'm going to quit, Beth said. I can't do this anymore. My doctor says my blood pressure is through the roof. I'm 28 years old and I'm on blood pressure medication because of work stress. That's not normal. No, it's not, Linda agreed. Have you been documenting everything like we talked about? Yes, every message, every unreasonable demand, every weekend she called me. I have months of documentation. Good, Linda said. Beth, have you thought about filing a formal complaint? With HR or the labor board? There was silence on the other end. Then Beth said quietly, I'm scared. What if they blacklist me? What if I can't get another job? I was scared too, Linda admitted. But you know what scared me more? The thought of ending up in the hospital. Or worse. Beth, you deserve better than this. We all do. Over the next week, Beth made her decision. She would file a formal complaint with the labor board. She asked Linda if she would be willing to provide a statement about her own experience if it came to that. Linda talked it over with Rachel that night. I don't know if I'm ready to relive all of that, she admitted. It took me so long to move past it. I know, Mom, Rachel said gently. But think about it this way. If Ms. Patterson keeps treating people like this, how many more Beths will there be? How many more people will end up sick or burned out or worse? Linda knew Rachel was right. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about breaking a cycle, about standing up not just for herself, but for everyone who'd been treated this way. Okay, Linda said. If Beth files her complaint, I'll provide a statement. I'll tell them everything. Beth filed her complaint the following week. The labor board launched an investigation, and true to her word, Linda provided a detailed statement about her own experience, including the medical documentation, the text messages she'd kept copies of, and the settlement she'd received. The investigation took months. During that time, 2 more former assistants came forward with similar stories. The pattern was undeniable. Ms. Patterson had a history of exploiting her assistants, demanding impossible hours, and creating a hostile work environment. The labor board issued findings against the company, violations of labor laws, failure to prevent workplace harassment, creating an unsafe work environment. The company was fined. They were required to implement new policies, mandatory training, and oversight of management practices. Rachel's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then at her mother's phone on the bedside table. It was buzzing, too. A message from Ms. Patterson. Rachel picked up her mother's phone and read the message out loud. When will you be back? I have 3 meetings tomorrow that need prep. This is really inconvenient timing. Inconvenient timing. Her mother was in the hospital and her boss was worried about meetings. Rachel felt something shift inside her. A determination she'd never felt before. She looked at her mother, still crying, still afraid, still convinced she had no choice but to go back to that horrible job. Mom, Rachel said quietly, her voice steady despite the rage burning in her chest. I'm not going to let you go back to that place. I'm not going to watch you kill yourself for someone who doesn't even care if you're alive or dead. Rachel, please, no. You've spent your whole life taking care of everyone else. Dad, me, your boss. Now it's time someone took care of you. Rachel stood up, her mother's phone still in her hand. She started taking screenshots. Every message, every email, every impossible demand sent at ungodly hours. She documented everything, her fingers moving quickly across the screen. Linda watched her daughter work, too exhausted to protest anymore. Part of her was terrified. Part of her was relieved. She'd been drowning for so long, and finally, someone had thrown her a lifeline. Rachel finished documenting everything and looked at her mother. "Get some rest, Mom. I'm going to fix this." "How?" Linda whispered. Rachel's jaw was set, her eyes fierce. "I don't know yet, but I promise you, Ms. Patterson is going to answer for what she's done to you." Ms. Patterson crossed her arms. "And the third thing?" "An apology," Rachel said quietly. "A real one. You don't have to admit legal wrongdoing, but you need to acknowledge what this did to her. What you did to her." Ms. Patterson laughed, but it was hollow. "You really think I'm going to agree to this? You walk in here with threats and demands?" "They're not threats," Rachel said. "They're options. You can agree to a settlement which stays private and confidential, or my mother can file a formal complaint with the labor board and pursue legal action, which becomes public record, which other employees might hear about, which your board of directors will definitely hear about." The color drained from Ms. Patterson's face. "Are you threatening to ruin my company?" "I'm offering you a chance to do the right thing," Rachel said. "My mother gave you 15 years of her life. She deserves better than being worked into a hospital bed." Ms. Patterson was quiet for a long moment. Then she walked back to her desk and sat down heavily. "I need to talk to my legal team." "You have 24 hours, Rachel said. "After that, we move forward with formal complaints. And if I agree to your terms, then my mother signs a confidentiality agreement and this stays between us. No lawsuits, no public complaints, no damage to your company's reputation." Ms. Patterson looked at the evidence spread across her desk. The phone, the medical records, the documented proof of everything Rachel had said. Her expression was hard to read, but Rachel could see the calculation happening behind her eyes. "I'll have an answer for you tomorrow," Ms. Patterson finally said. Rachel picked up the phone and folder. "My number is on the paper I left you. Call by 5 p.m. tomorrow." She walked out of the office, her legs shaking, but her head held high. She'd done it. She'd stood up to the person who'd been destroying her mother's life. Now she just had to wait and see if it worked. When she got back to the hospital, Linda was sitting up in bed, looking anxious. "How did it go?" Rachel sat down and took her mother's hand. "I think she's scared, Mom. Really scared. She knows she's in trouble. What if she fires me?" Linda whispered. "Then we sue," Rachel said simply. "And we win. Mom, I promise you one way or another this ends. You're not going back to that life." Linda's eyes filled with tears again, but this time they weren't tears of fear. They were tears of relief. For the first time in months, maybe years, she felt like she could breathe. She updated her resume, focusing on her skills and accomplishments. Rachel helped her practice interview questions, especially the tricky one. "Why did you leave your last position?" "Be honest," Rachel coached, "but professional. You can say you left to focus on your health, and you're looking for a company that values work-life balance." Linda applied to several positions, but one really caught her eye. A nonprofit organization that helped low-income families access health care. The executive director position needed an experienced assistant. The job description emphasized collaboration, reasonable hours, and a supportive work environment. She almost didn't apply. Part of her was still scared, still worried she wasn't good enough. But then she thought about everything she'd been through. She'd survived 15 years at a demanding job. She'd survived a health crisis. She'd survived starting over. If she could survive all that, she could handle a job interview. The interview was scheduled for a Tuesday morning. Linda wore her best suit, practiced her answers one more time, and drove to the nonprofit's office with Rachel's encouraging words in her head. "You've got this, Mom. Just be yourself." The executive director, a warm woman named Patricia, greeted her with a genuine smile. The office was smaller than Linda's old workplace, less flashy, but it felt welcoming. There were photos on the walls of families they'd helped. Thank you cards pinned to a bulletin board. The interview went well, really well. Patricia asked thoughtful questions and actually listened to Linda's answers. She talked about the organization's mission, the team culture, the importance of sustainable work practices. "We learned the hard way that burned-out employees can't help anyone," Patricia said. "We're strict about boundaries here. No weekend work, unless it's absolutely critical. No emails after 6 p.m. We want our team to have lives outside this office." Linda's eyes actually teared up hearing that. A workplace that valued boundaries, that saw employees as human beings with lives and families? It felt almost too good to be true. "Why did you leave your last position?" Patricia asked. Linda took a breath. "I developed some health issues due to work-related stress. I realized I needed to prioritize my well-being and find a workplace that values balance. I'm looking for a position where I can contribute meaningfully without sacrificing my health." Patricia nodded thoughtfully. "I appreciate your honesty. That takes courage." At the end of the interview, Patricia smiled. "I have a few more candidates to interview, but I have to say, Linda, your experience and your attitude really impressed me. You should hear from me by the end of the week." Linda left feeling hopeful for the first time in months, maybe even years. 3 days later, Patricia called. "Linda, I'd like to offer you the position." Linda accepted immediately, tears streaming down her face. She called Rachel right away, and her daughter screamed with joy on the other end of the line. On Linda's first day at her new job, Patricia gave her a tour, introduced her to the small team, and showed her to her desk. It was in a sunny corner with a window overlooking a small garden. "We usually wrap up around 5, Patricia said. "But if you need to leave early for any reason, just let me know. We're flexible here." Linda almost couldn't believe it. A boss who encouraged leaving on time? Who understood that life happened? The work itself was fulfilling. She was helping organize fundraising events, managing schedules for health clinics, coordinating with volunteers. She was making a real difference in people's lives. And at the end of each day, she left the office at 5 o'clock, drove home, and had dinner with Rachel. Sunday dinners became their tradition again. They'd cook together, laugh together, catch up on the week. Linda would tell Rachel about the families her organization was helping. Rachel would share stories from the hospital. They were rebuilding what had been lost. One Sunday evening, about 4 months into her new job, Linda and Rachel were washing dishes together when Rachel's phone rang. It was Jennifer, Rachel's lawyer friend. "Hey, Jen," Rachel answered, putting it on speaker. "What's up?" "I thought you'd want to know," Jennifer said. "Ms. Patterson's company just lost 2 more assistants. Both quit within 3 months, and apparently the board is investigating complaints about her management style. Word got around." Rachel glanced at her mother. Linda was quiet, processing this information. "I'm not happy she's struggling," Linda said finally. "But maybe she'll learn. Maybe she'll treat the next person better." "That's very gracious of you." "Mom," Rachel said. "Or maybe," Linda added with a small smile, "she'll just keep being who she is, and karma will keep catching up with her." They both laughed at that. 6 months after everything had happened, Linda was thriving. She'd gained back the weight she'd lost. The dark circles were gone. She smiled easily now, laughed often. She painted on weekends. She had energy for life again. One evening, she and Rachel were having dinner at a little restaurant they loved. Linda looked at her daughter across the table and felt overwhelming gratitude. "Thank you," she said suddenly. "For what?" "For saving my life, for having the courage I didn't have, for standing up for me when I couldn't stand up for myself." Rachel reached across the table and squeezed her mother's hand. "You taught me to be strong, Mom. You taught me to care about people. I was just returning the favor." "Still," Linda said, her voice thick with emotion, "I don't know where I'd be without you. Probably still at that desk, working myself to death." "But you're not," Rachel said firmly. "You're here. You're healthy. You're happy. That's all that matters." Linda nodded, tears in her eyes, but this time they were good tears. Happy tears. She'd lost so much over the years. Her husband, her health, her sense of self. But she'd found something, too. She'd found her way back to herself, back to her daughter, back to a life worth living. As they left the restaurant that night, walking out into the warm evening air, Linda felt something she hadn't felt in years, hope. not just for tomorrow, but for all the tomorrows to come. She had a job she loved, a daughter who loved her, and finally, the peace she'd been searching for all along. She was free. Ms. Patterson herself was required to attend management training and was put on probation by her own board of directors. If there were any more complaints, she would be removed from her position. Word spread through the industry, quietly at first, then more openly. Ms. Patterson's company struggled to hire new assistants. When they did, those assistants now had protections that Linda and Beth never had. Clear hour limits, mandatory time off, the right to refuse unreasonable demands without fear of retaliation. 6 months after Beth's complaint was filed, Linda received a letter in the mail. It was from the Labor Board thanking her for her cooperation in the investigation. Enclosed was a check, a portion of the fines collected from the company, distributed to the affected parties. But more than the money, there was something else in the envelope. A handwritten note from Beth. "Dear Linda, I got a new job. A good one, with a boss who treats me like a human being. I leave at 5 every day. I have weekends off. I'm sleeping again. I'm myself again. None of this would have happened if you hadn't shared your story with me, if you hadn't had the courage to speak up when it mattered. You didn't just help me. You helped everyone who comes after us. Thank you for being brave even when you were scared. Thank you for showing me that I deserved better. I hope you know how many lives you've changed. With gratitude, Beth." Linda read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down her face. She'd thought her story ended a year ago, when she walked out of that hospital and started her new job. But maybe it hadn't ended at all. Maybe it had just begun. That Sunday, Linda and Rachel had dinner together as usual. Linda showed Rachel the letter from Beth, and they both cried happy tears. "You did something really important, Mom," Rachel said. "You broke the cycle." "We did," Linda corrected. "I couldn't have done any of this without you." "Without you standing up for me when I couldn't stand up for myself," Rachel smiled. "That's what family does. We protect each other." Linda looked at her daughter, so strong and fierce and kind, and felt overwhelming pride. She'd spent so many years feeling like a victim, like someone things happened to. But she wasn't a victim anymore. She was a survivor. More than that, she was someone who'd helped others survive too. A few weeks later, Patricia, Linda's boss at the nonprofit, called her into her office. Linda's heart jumped, worried something was wrong. But Patricia was smiling. "Linda, I want to talk to you about something. We're expanding our programs, and we need someone to develop and oversee our workplace wellness initiative. It would involve training, outreach, helping other organizations create healthier work environments." "And I immediately thought of you." Linda was stunned. "Me? Why me?" "Because you've lived it," Patricia said simply. "You understand what it's like to work in a toxic environment. You understand the toll it takes, and you've shown incredible courage in speaking up about it. I can't think of anyone better to lead this program." Linda accepted the position. It felt like everything she'd been through, all the pain and struggle and fear, had led to this moment. A chance to turn her experience into something meaningful. A chance to help others before they reached the breaking point she'd reached. On her first day in her new role, Linda stood in front of a room full of HR professionals and managers, preparing to give a presentation on recognizing and preventing workplace burnout. Her hands shook slightly as she looked out at the audience. But then she thought about Beth, about all the Beths out there who were struggling in silence. She took a deep breath and began to speak. "My name is Linda, and 3 years ago I collapsed at my desk from exhaustion. I was working 80 hours a week for a boss who saw me as a tool rather than a person. I ended up in the hospital, and I almost didn't make it out. But I did. And today, I'm here to make sure that what happened to me doesn't happen to anyone else." As she told her story, she saw heads nodding. She saw recognition in people's eyes. She saw some people wiping away tears. And she knew without a doubt that she was exactly where she was supposed to be. After the presentation, several people came up to thank her. One woman, probably in her 50s, squeezed Linda's hand and said, "Thank you for saying what so many of us needed to hear. You may have just saved my life." That night, Linda called Rachel to tell her about the presentation. "You know what the best part was?" Linda said. "I wasn't scared. I thought I would be, telling my story in front of all those people. But I wasn't. I felt strong. I felt proud. You should feel proud, Mom, Rachel said. Look at everything you've accomplished. You turned the worst experience of your life into something that's helping so many people. After they hung up, Linda sat on her balcony with a cup of tea, watching the sunset. She thought about the woman she'd been 3 years ago. Exhausted, scared, trapped. She thought about the woman she was now. Healthy, confident, purposeful. She'd lost a lot along the way. Time, health, years of her life spent in a job that nearly killed her. But she'd gained something too. She'd gained her voice, her strength, her ability to help others find theirs. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Linda smiled. Not because her journey had been easy, but because she'd survived it. Because she'd turned her pain into purpose. Because she'd learned, finally, that she was worth more than any job could ever demand. She was free, and she was helping others find their freedom too. That, she realized, was the real happy ending. Boss demanded her assistant work, 80 hours a week, until she got sick and her daughter intervened.